When Alexander's security feed went dark for 7 minutes, he thought it was just a glitch until he saw Grace and the twins on the floor and a shadow moving behind them. The truth led to an arrest no one expected: his missing wife, Lydia. Betrayal, guilt, and redemption collide in this heart-stopping story of family and second chances. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments what time is it and where are you watching from. Let's start. When Alexander's wife, Lydia, gave birth to their twins, everything about her shifted. The woman who once filled the house with laughter now moved like a stranger through her own home. Motherhood didn't soften her, it irritated her. While the Bobbies cried, Lydia scrolled through her phone, her face lit not by affection, but by bank notifications. "You hold them," she'd say coldly, brushing past Alexander, as if the infants were his burden, not theirs. At first, he excused it as postpartum exhaustion. She just needs time, he told himself, watching her disappear into the guest room every night while he tried to soothe the crying newborns. But time didn't fix anything. Lydia stopped pretending entirely. She stopped trying to be a mother, stopped touching the Bobbies, stopped calling herself a wife. 6 months after the twins were born, while Alexander was away on a 3-day business trip, Lydia made her move. She withdrew every dollar from the joint accounts, emptied the safe, and vanished without saying goodbye. She didn't leave a note, not even a message for the children. When Alexander came home, the mansion felt hollow, echoing, and cold. The Bobbies were there, sleeping in their cribs, cared for by a confused housekeeper who hadn't been told Lydia was gone. He stood in the nursery doorway for a long time, staring at them. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. He just tightened his jaw and said quietly, "Fine. It's just us now." That betrayal hardened him completely. He stopped trusting anyone, even the people who hadn't wronged him. The staff was the first to feel it. Within a week, he fired almost everyone: the cook, the gardener, even the driver who'd worked for his family for 15 years. He kept only what was necessary. He turned the mansion into a fortress. New locks, new alarms, new codes. Then he installed an entire surveillance system with cameras in every corridor, every entryway, and even in the nursery. From then on, he lived like a guard, not a father. He ate alone, worked alone, and monitored every sound the house made. His emotions stayed buried behind spreadsheets and camera feeds. The twins were growing, but he barely saw them. He told himself he was protecting them, but in truth, he was protecting himself from ever feeling betrayed again. When the first nanny came, she lasted 11 days. The second stayed a month before breaking down in tears, begging to leave. The third walked out mid-afternoon after he scolded her for singing too loudly. "They need quiet," he'd shouted. She left without collecting her pay. After that, the agency hesitated to send anyone until Grace. Grace arrived one gray morning with her documents neatly folded in an envelope. She was in her mid-20s, plain but graceful, wearing a beige dress and simple shoes. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic. "I've taken care of newborns, sir," she said, hands clasped. "I can stay full-time if needed." Alexander studied her. No makeup, no arrogance, no hesitation. "Full-time means full responsibility," he said sternly. "No phone distractions, no visitors. Cameras are everywhere. I understand," she replied. "I just want to do the job well," and somehow she did. Within days, the mansion's air shifted. The twins started laughing again, a sound Alexander had almost forgotten. Grace sang to them while preparing bottles, hummed as she cleaned, and always spoke to them as if they understood every word. The house that had felt like a prison began to sound faintly alive again. But Alexander didn't relax. His mind never rested. Every smile from her, every effortless touch with the Bobbies, every calm answer to his sharp tone, it all made him uneasy. "She's hiding something," he thought. "No one's this patient." The twins noticed the difference, too. Whenever he picked them up, they cried until they choked. But the moment Grace held them, they stopped. Sometimes they even reached for her when he was near, as if she was the parent. That cut deeper than he'd ever admit. He began testing her subtly, moving things slightly to see if she'd notice, leaving a toy misplaced, asking the same question twice to check her consistency. She never slipped. "Everything's fine, sir," she'd say gently, never looking directly into his suspicion. Still, the house's silence pressed on him. At night, Alexander would sit in his study, eyes fixed on the surveillance screens. Dozens of black and white boxes glowed before him. Corridors, hallways, kitchen, nursery. Most nights he'd catch Gray sitting by the crib, half asleep, but always near the twins. He didn't like that. "She doesn't trust me either," he muttered once under his breath. Over the next few weeks, strange patterns began. Twice the motion sensors in the nursery went off around midnight. Grace said she must have walked in to check the bobbies. They moved in their sleep, sir. I just wanted to be sure. Her calmness disarmed him, but it didn't convince him. Then one night, something different happened. It was past 3:00 a.m. when his phone vibrated violently beside his hotel bed. Alexander, half asleep, grabbed it. The screen glowed red. Alert. Camera offline, nursery. He blinked, confused. His system never failed. The nursery feed had gone dark, not frozen, but fully offline. He sat up instantly, opening the app, waiting for the connection to restore. It didn't. The timer kept ticking. 1 minute, 2, then 3. His chest tightened. He tried to call the mansion's landline, no answer. He tried Grace's number, no response. The alert kept flashing. 4 minutes, 5, 6. Finally, after 7 full minutes, the feed reconnected. Everything looked normal. The twins asleep, the room still. But Alexander's heart wouldn't slow down. His system was backed by 2 networks. It wasn't supposed to fail, not even for a second. Moments later, the camera glitched again. The screen froze, blinked twice, then came back. Alexander blinked hard, thinking his tired eyes were playing tricks. But the image had changed. The crib was empty. Grace and the bobbies were now on the floor, still tangled, the faint outlines of rope around them. Grace's face looked pale, streaked with something dark, her uniform torn. The twins weren't crying, but their tiny bodies pressed close to her, motionless but breathing. Alexander froze. His chest stopped moving. The air in the hotel room turned cold. Then the feed flickered again, movement near the nursery doorway. A shadow. Someone else was in the house. He shot out of bed, grabbed his phone, and shouted into it, "Security! Connect to the house now!" He tried the intercom through the app. No response. The line was dead. He refreshed again. The feed went black. He was already grabbing his car keys before his mind could catch up. "Grace, hold on," he muttered, racing through the hotel corridor. By the time he hit the parking lot, his hands were shaking so badly that the key fob slipped twice before the car unlocked. The drive back took less than 2 hours. He didn't remember the roads, the toll gates, or the red lights. His mind replayed that frozen image on the screen over and over. Grace on the floor, the twins by her side. Every second that passed felt like a punishment. When he reached the mansion gate, it was half open. He hadn't left it that way. The sensor light above the driveway flickered weakly as if the power had been tampered with. He didn't wait for the car to stop moving before jumping out. The main door was ajar. "Grace!" he shouted, rushing in. No answer. His shoes echoed on the marble floor as he sprinted through the hallway. The lights in the living room were dim, flickering. A faint beeping from the system panel filled the silence. Multiple alerts active. He reached the nursery door and froze. The door was wide open. Inside, Grace lay on the floor just like in the footage, her arms bound loosely with cord. The twins were beside her, unharmed, but crying softly, their faces buried in her chest. Her eyes fluttered open when she heard his voice. "Mr. Hale," she whispered weakly. He dropped to his knees, cutting the ropes with a letter opener from the nearby desk. "Grace, what happened? Who did this?" Her voice trembled. "Someone broke in, a man. He was already inside before I checked the noise. I tried to lock the door, but she winced as she moved her arm. He shoved me, took something from the drawer, and left." "What did he take?" She looked toward the study. "Your safe keys." Alexander's stomach turned. He ran to his office. The safe was open. Papers and boxes scattered on the floor. Stacks of cash were gone. Hundreds of thousands. But there was something else missing. The small silver pendant Lydia used to wear, the one he had locked away years ago. He stood there shaking, his reflection warped in the empty safe door. Police sirens approached minutes later, summoned by his frantic emergency call. Officers moved through the mansion, collecting prints photographing the damaged wires near the security panel. "Looks like professional work," one of them said. "Whoever did this knew your system." Alexander didn't answer. He sat on the couch, elbows on his knees, staring blankly at the floor. Grace sat nearby, holding the twins close. The younger one hiccuped in her arms, the other clutched her sleeve. "Why would they hurt you?" Alexander asked quietly. Grace shook her head. "He didn't mean to," he was panicking. "I think he came through the kitchen window. When I screamed, he pushed me down and tied me up." Her voice cracked. "He told me not to move or he'd hurt the bobbies if I called for help." Alexander's jaw clenched. "Did you see his face?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I think he knew where everything was." The officer turned sharply. Inside knowledge. Grace looked at Alexander, unsure if she should continue. He mentioned Lydia. The room went silent. Alexander looked up slowly, eyes narrowing. What did he say? He said she sent him to get what's hers. For a moment, Alexander couldn't breathe. Lydia, after all these years, the thought of her being alive somewhere, still reaching into his life, sent a chill through him. He walked to the nursery window, staring at the broken latch, the curtains swaying. She left them, he muttered bitterly. And now she sends thieves into my home. Gray spoke softly behind him. She didn't send him for them, sir. He didn't even look at the bobbies. He just wanted the safe. The officers promised to patrol the area, take statements, and trace the fingerprints. But even after they left, Alexander didn't rest. He rechecked every lock, every wire, every connection to the system. His paranoia had been right all along. The danger hadn't been in his head. At dawn, the mansion was still a mess of flashing police lights and cables. Grace sat on the couch, holding both twins close, exhausted but awake. Alexander walked over, finally exhaling. "You saved them," he said quietly. She shook her head. "I just did what any mother would do." He paused. The word mother lingered in the air like something sacred. For the first time in months, he looked at the twins not as burdens or memories of betrayal, but his lives he almost lost. He knelt down beside them, brushing their soft hair. They reached for his hand instinctively. Grace smiled faintly. "They know you now." Alexander's eyes glistened. He didn't reply. Outside, the morning light crept through the curtains, landing softly on Grace and the twins. The house was still, the chaos behind them, but something inside Alexander shifted. A quiet, painful gratitude. He stood there for a long time, watching them breathe. Then he whispered, "No more cameras. From now on, I'll watch them myself." And for the first time since Lydia left, he turned off the screens. The house felt human again. The quiet no longer frightened him. It soothed him. Grace was in the nursery, gently humming as she held one twin while the other slept in the crib. Morning light spilled through the curtains, warming the same floors that had once felt like cold marble. Alexander stood by the doorway watching them. "You should rest," he said softly. "I will, sir," she replied. "After they do," he almost smiled. That word "they" meant something now. It meant family, but the investigation didn't rest. 2 detectives stayed behind after the patrol cars left, combing through data logs and camera archives. The external footage had picked up something, a flash of a man's face near the gate captured by one of the older outdoor cameras that Alexander had forgotten to replace. "Do you recognize him?" the officer asked, freezing the image. Alexander frowned. The face was blurry, but the jacket looked familiar. A gray windbreaker Lydia used to own. No, he lied quietly, though his chest tightened. Grace looked up from the couch, sensing his change in tone. "Sir." He shook his head. "Nothing. Keep feeding them." That day dragged into night. Alexander didn't sleep. He walked through the mansion with the detectives as they traced the break-in route. The wires near the east side of the house had been cut deliberately. The intruder had disabled the secondary router box, the one that connected the indoor cameras. Only someone who knew the layout and the backup wiring could have done that. The next morning, the call came. The police had found a Bunadut car near the outskirts of the city. Inside were some of Alexander's stolen documents along with a wallet containing an ID, Ryan Trent, known for gambling debts, fraud, and illegal hacking. But there was something else. A set of text messages retrieved from a phone found near the car. Messages between Ryan and Lydia. 3 days later, they arrested her. When Alexander saw her name appear on the police report, his stomach twisted. Lydia, once the woman he built his world around, was now a fugitive caught in the ruins of her own greed. During interrogation, she confessed everything. The money she'd stolen years ago hadn't lasted long. She'd spent most of it gambling. First at casinos, then online, chasing losses with desperation. When she met Run, she thought she'd found a new start. But when the money ran out, he turned on her. He blackmailed her with photos, threatening to expose how she'd abandoned her children. "You don't know what kind of man he is," Lydia said during the recorded statement, voice trembling. "He said if I didn't help him, he'd tell everyone, even the twins, what I'd done. He wanted money, and he knew you had plenty." Desperate, she gave him details. How to bypass the mansion's outer alarms where the routers were hidden, even how to cut power to the network before the backup kicked in. But she warned him, "Don't touch the bobbies, don't hurt them. Just get the cash and go." Run followed her instructions almost perfectly. He used a portable signal jammer to block the Wi-Fi feed for exactly 7 minutes, just long enough to open the safe and grab what he could. He entered through the side entrance near the generator room, the only blind spot Lydia remembered from the renovation plans. When Grace heard a noise and came to check, he panicked. That was when he tied her up and fled through the back garden before the system rebooted. The police tracked him through nearby CCTV footage at a gas station hours later. He fled the country border on a fake ID, but Lydia's confession along with the car evidence was enough to convict her. When Alexander visited her during questioning, she looked nothing like the woman he remembered. Her hair was thin, her hands trembling. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered through the glass. "I just wanted to survive." He stared at her for a long time, his expression unreadable. "You had everything," he said quietly. "A home, family, me. You traded it all for strangers," and greed tears rolled down her face. "I know." He turned away before she could say more. Outside, Grace was waiting by the car with the twins. They reached for him when he approached, tiny arms stretching from their carriers. Grace smiled faintly. "They're starting to recognize your voice." Alexander knelt down, brushing their hair back gently. "They've heard enough shouting. Maybe it's time they hear something else." As he lifted one twin into his arms, the baby didn't cry, not this time. The sun dipped behind the mansion as they returned home. The air felt different, lighter, almost forgiving. Alexander stood by the nursery window, watching Grace settle the twins into their crib. "Grace," he said softly, "you saved my children, you saved this home." She shook her head. "No, sir, I just gave them what their mother couldn't. Peace." He nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the babies' calm faces. "Then stay," he said finally, not as a maid, but as their guardian. Grace blinked, stunned, then smiled through tears. "I will. Would you forgive the one who destroyed your home or thank the one who rebuilt it? Watch till the end to see how Alexander's trust is tested and how one woman's courage saves an entire family. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us below where you're watching from.